How entitled can you be? What's up, guys? Welcome back to Daisha's Digest. Today, we will be diving into the topic of entitled people. We have several stories to go over today. As always, all of the links and relevant information is included in the description. Let's get into it. My mother thinks she's entitled to one of my properties. I haven't seen my mother since I was 16 and we were in court. So 19 years, I haven't had any contact with the mother. She hired a private investigator to find me, and I still refuse to talk to her. I even had my lawyer send her a formal letter of no contact and threatened her with a restraining order. She sent this email to me through my work email. I shortened it, but it basically said, "To OP, this is your mother. I thought you would have matured by now and came and apologized to me and your father for what you put us through. Because of you, your father lost his teaching career and we had to sell our house. However, it has come to my knowledge that you own some properties in my area, so it's only right if you give us one of them as an apology," referring to one of my most expensive properties, "and it would be a good fit for us. As soon as you hand over the keys to the property, we can finally be able to start to heal and get past this misunderstanding that you blew out of proportion. I hope you come to the right decision." Signed, her name. I just can't stop laughing at this. Like, no, girl, I'm not giving you anything. This is just another bit of evidence to help me get a restraining order against her. What? How entitled can you be? Wow. Obviously something happened for them to have to go to court and for him to have like a whole lawyer involved and like this whole thing set up. Obviously there was something acrimonious that happened here, and the audacity of her to reach out and just request one of his properties like it's nothing when they haven't spoken in 19 years, like have had no contact, to the point where she had to hire somebody to track him down, and you think he just gonna willy-nilly give you a property? Some people, I just don't understand. Someone said, "Keep fighting to protect yourself. I know it's not just me who is curious of what they did that caused you to have to cut them off. And how the freak could you be responsible for your dad losing his job? My stepdad accused me of the same thing. He was a journalist at a local paper. He was reported to CPS by my school in 5th grade because they found bruising on my arms from harm. He was fired when the police report reached his editor. But almost 30 years later, it's still my fault. He's still bringing it up in 2020 while my mother was dying from cancer. Some parents are just horrible human beings." Wow, that is terrible. Actually, I'm gonna look into some of his I think he has some previous posts that can give us some insight into the kind of people his parents are. Oh, looks like they have very, very traumatizing relationship with their, I don't know if I want to read this. This seems very, very stressful. Just from what I'm seeing in his previous posts, from what I gather, he is a gay male, and when it came out to his parents, it did not go well. Also, it looks like his mother had some mental health issues. There was some harm on the part of his father that ended up putting him in the hospital because of his sexual orientation. It's a lot. If you want to go to read his previous posts, you can. So I'll just leave it at that. But I do think it's interesting how his mom just like up and wants one of his properties. Crazy, and she obviously didn't get it. He has an update to this. So, small update, my mother thinks she's entitled to one of my properties. I'd first like to thank you all for the hugs, well wishes, and reward. I truly didn't believe so many of you would see my post, let alone leave comments. Not gonna lie, you all gave me a bit of an ego boost. Secondly, I'm in a really good place in my life. What happened to me was over 20 years ago, though I'll probably never truly be over it. What happened to me was over 20 years ago, though I'll probably never truly be over it. I am happy. Now on to the update. Guess who's on Reddit and just so happened to see my post? I got another email from her demanding an apology for making her look bad on social media. She now has given us a deadline to hand over the keys to my house. I forgot to tell you all that the most expensive property I own is my family's home, the one my husband and stepkids live in. But she's willing to compromise and take the apartment that I bought for my aunt. Oh, and I'm supposed to let my younger sister, who I've never met, use my 2-bedroom apartment for free. I mean, after reading my post and seeing over 600 comments about how crazy and entitled she is, she still thinks she's in the right. Emailing me on my work email and leaving fake reviews online, she left 2, with her actual name has given me more evidence of that restraining order. So I guess I should thank her for making it so easy for me. Wow, some people really are just like cursed with terrible, terrible parents. Like terrible biological parents. That's sad. She definitely isn't, you can tell that she isn't mentally all there because, as I always like to say, this behavior is not normal. Fappy Day said, just something to consider. I recall a similar post where the estranged mother actually showed up to the property, broke in, and basically tried to evict the tenant, check the locks, and warn anyone who might need to know. And someone replied to that, make sure the tenants know they will only ever hear from you, not some crazy lady. Babies from the Crypt said, yes, put a camera and ring doorbell at each of your properties and save all of her insane messages to you. She sounds so delusional that this is a real possibility, and with squatters' rights, it could become a serious problem if she gets inside one. Put up the cameras and call the police. If she even steps foot on any property, and show them the camera and messages showing she's basically trying to extort you. Someone said, hey, crazy mom, if you're reading this, leave your child alone and go get a life. Hey, birth unit, if you're reading this, then know that you are crazy. Now F off. And then another person is saying, get some cameras, the audacity, like she's so entitled, get the lawyers involved, get a restraining order, etc. So there is actually another update. Update 2, my mother thinks she's entitled to one of my properties. She was arrested. Oh, whoa, that escalated quickly. I have 3 properties. 1, the first property I ever bought and now rent out. 2, the big house near water, aka my forever home. 3, the apartment I bought for my auntie/mom after my uncle/dad died. I'm assuming like those are the ones that actually took care of him, not the mother in question. Properties 2 and 3 were not my biggest worries because my mother would only be annoying family, but 1 is rented out to a lovely couple and they don't deserve to be dragged into it. Can you guess which one she showed up to? She showed up and tried to evict my great tenants with a fake eviction notice. She told the girls that she was my mother and that I gave her authority to evict. However, I already gave the girls a warning about my mother, and if she tried anything to first call the police and then me, and they did exactly as I said. When I got there, my mother was trying to convince the police that I gave authority to evict them, and I was lying to them to get her in trouble because of an argument we had. But for someone who allegedly hired a private investigator to find me, she put down the wrong name on the forms. She didn't know that I took my husband's last name. So she was arrested and I have a temporary restraining order on her, and she is not coming near me or any of my properties. As for my father, I told my sister that if she got my father's therapist number, I'd give it to my therapist so they can discuss further about possibly, maybe having a conversation with him, but only when my therapist and I believe I'm ready. I thought my father would fight me and demand that I see him, but he didn't, and he agreed to everything and told my sister that he'd understand if I never feel ready to see him. On a lighter note, my coping methods for stress are building and fixing things, so I converted my old garage into a D&D gaming room for my husband's birthday, and I got me a happy ending, if you know what I mean. That's it. I'll update if anything else happens. Wow. Well, I mean, he took people's advice, let his tenants know. So luckily they were able to call the police, and she was, it was able to quickly be resolved, and hopefully that just gives him more evidence for his restraining order that he's trying to get. But how unhinged of his mother, huh? Dang, I had saved this post about a Karen in prayer group, but it looks like whoever posted it deleted it, so I can't read that one. Sorry. All right, next one. Entitled nephew is giving sister the karma she deserves for raising him to be entitled. I lived with my sister a few years ago. While I did, I was there to help her with the house, cleaning, my nephew, etc. However, things didn't go down like that. When I moved in, my nephew was around 5, and I, being his aunt, believed that being older than him, I may have some authority living in their house. Turns out I was wrong. He had more than me. He didn't have to listen to me. He didn't have to help me clean when I asked. I wasn't even mean about it. They, for some reason, believed I was, though. Saying things like, "Will you help me please clean up in here? I don't know what all this stuff is or where it goes." I never spent time in the living room, mostly secluded in my room, then was ignored for some video game or told to hold on. So I would ask again, "Hey, come on, please help me get this done for your mom while she's working, so everything's done when she's off work, please." Then he would be all whiny while I'm in the process of cleaning half of it already. Eventually he'd go and bother his mom at work, and I'd be told by him that he doesn't have to do anything and to just leave him to play his games. The real kicker was when he'd get mad at me and tell me to just go to my room. Now that one, whoa, Nelly, that one was something else. Having his mom do nothing about it, well, that was even better. She decided that when I was house sitting for my folks for 6 days while they were out of town and needed their cats to be watched, that since she was unemployed, she couldn't clean up after herself, her husband, and kid, and kicked me out. Now she is understanding the karma of that. I put up with her and her family straight up treating me like a second-class citizen because I needed the roof over my head. I have been fighting the government to get my disability for years. I'm really ill, and her family treated me like I was a hypochondriac for 5 years. I was always overworking myself for them to make sure things were clean. Yes, there were days when I was just too sick, but I tried my hardest, pushing myself past my limits constantly. It was obvious I was very sick. I ballooned up to 275 pounds and then suddenly lost 105 pounds in just 1 year. Oh my goodness. I kept hearing my sister say, "Must be nice." It wasn't nice. It was god awful. I had no idea why I was rapidly losing weight without trying, because I was having a flare from all the stress I was under, apparently. Literally 7 days after I moved out, I was diagnosed with 2 very rare diseases that are hard to detect. I even had to have major surgery just a few months later on my arteries because of the state of one of them, because of one of my diseases. Do I get an apology for how I was treated? Nope. Do I still hear her saying the phrase, "Well, she's a hypochondriac," every time I look at her, echoing in my head? Most definitely. Now she is dealing with my nephew who won't listen to her, won't do his schoolwork, argues back with her constantly, treats her like they let him treat me. While I was living there, when he started to treat his mom like crap, I came to her defense. I told him it was not okay to disrespect his mother that way, that he shouldn't be disrespectful to her at all, to knock it off. 9 times out of 10, I was able to de-escalate. Not every time, mainly because I wasn't allowed. I was treated as though I was not a person in his life who had any authority over him. His other aunts and uncles did, though. Why? I think in their minds, it all boils down to the fact that I don't have children and I wouldn't understand how to raise one. Now, I see it very simply. You don't need to have a child to have common sense, patience, intelligence, the ability to actually listen, and the ability to treat a child like it's a human being with intelligence of its own. If you actually listen patiently to what is being said by the child, you can have the common sense and intelligence to know whether or not they are playing you. You talk to them like they are people, not stupid just because of their age, which most times tends to make things worse. You talk to them calmly and make them calmer by explaining that yelling at me isn't going to help you, and there you have it. If they trusted me enough to patch up their kids' wounds or get out their splinters, why wasn't I trusted enough to help them with their homework or teach them when they needed homeschooling? I'm smart. I'm pretty sure I could have helped a bunch of 3rd or 4th graders. I'm just saying. They let me babysit, but I had no authority. Her kid would take his phone and sneak off, call his folks, and tattle on me if I ever wanted him to clean up after himself with his cousins. He blamed all messes made on his cousins too. Now I am not there to help her. No one else helps her. She is left alone to deal with the mess she made, and part of me feels bad. Part of me does want to go over and help her. Then I remember that I have no authority. So what exactly would be the point? I would get there just to stand there? I think the best part of it all is that they are mad at me because I wasn't able to get back to finish cleaning up after I moved my things out. I don't drive. I had to move 35 minutes away from where I was living, and I had no way there. Also, the situation I was put into was really no better than what I was already in. It's just a different setup with less yelling. The fact that they are mad at me at all and are still treating me with disdain and have yet to attempt any kind of apology for just being so awful to me is just too funny. I will forever have permanent mental scars from my time living there. I moved out at the end of 2022, and the thought of all of it still brings me to tears. Thanks for helping me rant a little. Whew. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't have much to say. I don't like it when people just let their children be disrespectful to adults, like authority figures, especially like that's his aunt. And then she's saying the other aunts and uncles are able to have kind of that authority over him, but she's not for some reason. I don't know. It seems like maybe her and her sister don't have the best relationship. But now apparently the sister is seeing just how bad her kid really is, because apparently OP was able to kind of de-escalate some situations here and there. She was able to maintain the cleanliness of the house, maintain some sense of order. But now that she's gone, it seems like things are falling to the wayside. So, I mean, it seems like the consequences of her sister's actions. Plus Data 1099 says, sit back, put your feet up, and watch the circus knowing you tried your best to help. You need to put you and your needs first. Happy Fun 0160 said, she's raising an entitled kin for the future, and now we'll see what she did all his life. And OP said, I tried to help. I tried teaching him early on that negative actions have negative consequences, and I was told I was a bully. I literally told her, if she doesn't teach him these things and keeps babying him, he's going to grow up entitled. Yet, they kept buying him whatever he wanted, when he wanted. They kept letting him get away with whatever he wanted. They kept letting him blame whatever he wanted on his cousins, and they believed him. I never did, and that's why he didn't like me being in charge. I held him accountable. Man, I really despise parents that don't hold their children accountable, because they just make it hard for the rest of society. Like, parents have the responsibility to teach their children how to behave in the world. And in the real world, they aren't always going to get what they want. They aren't always going to be told yes. They aren't always going to win. They aren't always going to get participation. Like, it's not always going to be easy. So parents need to teach these hard lessons to their children. And when kids are spoiled, they just make it so hard for the rest of society. And I hate that. So she does have a couple of edits on this post. Edit 2. So I decided to just make this all one solid thing, so it's just easier for all to read and no one has any more issues. Okay, I hope it helps. I'm assuming this was like broken up into a couple posts and she put it together. And then edit 3. No matter how I have tried to make this easier for anyone to read, there are still complaints. So this is my last edit on this. If you cannot read it or find it hard to read after this, I get it. I don't need your opinion on it though. If your comment isn't for the conversation, but instead how incoherent. Okay, so I guess people were complaining about how hard it was to read. I'm not gonna lie, it was a little hard for me to read. The grammar and the structure was a little off, but I got through it. I guess she was getting a lot of comments about that. There's not any updates. I think she was more so just ranting. I mean, she's out the house now, so she doesn't have to deal with it, but her sister's gonna have to deal with the consequences of raising an entitled son. Good luck. All right, so we have another story. Am I the a-hole for telling my parents we aren't giving them money and they need to humble themselves? Throw a way to keep this separate from my normal account. I, 38 female, and my husband, 41 male, have been stressing over my parents. My parents are screwed as they took out of their pensions at 55 and have only about $100,000 to $130,000 each left. Their house has some equity, but not as much as you would think, as they have withdrawn from their equity line of credit several times. My dad has a $100,000 truck. Damn, what kind of truck is that? And a vintage Porsche. And my mom has a 7-seater when they are the only ones now. My dad is very prideful and refuses to take anyone's advice, so it was a shock when they came to me and asked for money. He has had a lot of health issues and told me he is going to be taking Social Security now. He is 68 and quitting his job, which means they can't afford their mortgage or car payments. They totally blindsided me. I had no idea how bad it was until now. Thinking back, I guess I should have known, as they buy so much unnecessary crap, but my parents always acted like they were rich. I told them point blank I wasn't funding them until I could see all their accounts and assets, and this caused a huge fight, but they eventually relented. I went through what they have, and they really don't need my help. They just need to downsize dramatically. My husband is a CPA, so he knows his stuff, and we went through and told them what they needed to do. They need to sell all the vehicles and get a reliable sedan. They need to sell their 3,400 square foot home and buy into a single home with a basement suite or an apartment. I think the apartment is better, as my dad struggles to mow the lawn and hires someone now anyway. But my mom insists she needs land for a garden. After that, their Social Security payments would be enough and they would still have a small nest egg. This was met with them complaining that they would be living like prisoners. My parents were angry that if they got a single family, they would need to rent out the basement. My dad insists the basement, which he has as a man cave, is necessary for life, and my mom refuses to downsize as she has a whole room full of clothes at their current home that can't fit into a smaller house. Y'all don't want help. I got mad and told them they need to humble themselves since they are the ones asking for money. This resulted in them yelling how ungrateful I am over the phone until I hung up. I told them they have to do this because I'm not helping. They still have more assets than my husband and we have a son to save college funds for. My parents have been trying to guilt me by saying they gave me great Christmas presents and a college fund, so I owe them. Ooh, I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. I feel like that was a tiny portion of their spending and it didn't put them in this position. But am I obligated to help support them when they can support themselves if they downsize? No, you are not obligated. And I hate the entitlement. First of all, you decided to bring me into this world. Not saying that you have to pay for anyone's college fund or anything like that. I don't think that's mandatory as a parent. Saying this because I had to pay my own way through college and get my own loans. But if you decided on your own accord to set me up with the college fund, that's your choice. And you shouldn't, years down the line, be using that against me. I didn't make you pay for my college, so why are you expecting me to take care of you when you're able-bodied, you have other options, and I have a whole family to take care of? I can't be taking care of you and my family. You have a path forward. You just need to downsize. You have plenty of assets that you can downsize so that you can live a humble, comfortable life. But you want to live lavishly with a $100,000 car, and you've already taken out of your pension. You've already taken equity lines of credit. Like, you are living way above your means. This whole thing is not realistic. I wouldn't help either if I was OP. And I don't care about them trying to guilt me. Oh, we did this for you and you did. You're the parents. I would hope that you did do some of the stuff you said you did. But she's not obligated to help in any way. There are very few situations in which I think children are obligated to do things for their parents financially. Because why? Like, there's very few situations where I see that it makes sense for children to do that. Someone said, not the a-hole. Poor planning on their part is not an emergency on your part. They can afford their lifestyle if they downsize, but they are choosing not to downsize. Instead, they want you to subsidize their lives. Don't. If they're strapped for cash, they can sell stuff. And someone replied, exactly this. OP should stick to their guns. Someone else said, I mean, the mother has a whole room full of clothes. Selling those will help downsize for the move. That's a good point too. I'm still reeling from the 3,400 square foot house these two people are rattling around in. That's more than twice the size of the house we raised our daughter and several foster kids in. At one point, we had 5 kids in the house and we felt a little bit pressed for space. Well, for privacy, really. There was plenty of space. For the most part, we were all fine. Yeah, a 3,400 square foot house they could do with half of that. I'm just trying to think, like, my apartment is like 800 square feet. If I doubled that would be plenty of space if there was 2 people, which would be about half of what they're in now. So they doing too much. Someone said a 7-seater car for 2 people. Right. Crazy. For the most part, I think everybody pretty much agrees downsizing is the best option for them. I hope they take OP's advice and this person or she deleted the account. I wonder if it was getting more attention than what she wanted it to get, but she's definitely not the a-hole, and her parents, entitled people like that just give me the ick. All right, let's go to another one. How do I deal with my entitled friend? I have this friend in college I've known for 3 years, and we've always been in the same classes. She does this incredibly frustrating thing where she expects me to remind her of her own responsibilities every time an assignment is due or our shared class is about to start. If I don't remind her, she sends me passive-aggressive messages like, "Thanks for reminding me about the homework, by the way." Or, "Can you believe it? Class has started and nobody thought to call me." She pulls this with her other friends as well, but they usually apologize and make excuses for not reminding her, which seems to get her off their backs pretty well. And I could do that too for the sake of my own peace of mind, but I refuse to apologize for something that isn't my responsibility. I don't want her to think this is her right, even for a second. I always know that, sure, I might have accidentally set a high standard for her, the way I used to call to remind her about assignments, and I would even send her homework answers at times, but the difference is that I did it willingly. I don't know why it translated into her head that she is now my job. A bit of background about her is she's spoiled at home. She has an older sister who's about 6 years older and has always done everything for her. But that's not my problem. I don't remember signing up to be her caretaker. We're both adults and she's about 2 years older than me. So it's not like I have a maturity advantage over her that makes me responsible for her. So how do I tactfully deal with entitled behavior? Girl, that's not your friend. You need to drop her like a bad habit. It sounds like she's not providing any value to y'all's interactions, and if anything, she's taking more than anything. I would just go low contact. I don't see myself wanting to be associated with anybody like that. Like anybody who can't take responsibility for their own actions, keep up with their own schedule, know how to operate in their own life. Because if she's like this now, it's not just all of a sudden going to get better. Why do you need to continue to be in contact with her? Y'all have only known each other for 3 years. Even if it was 13 years. No, I would just limit contact with her, or just completely cut her off. If you wanted to directly address the situation, I would just let her know, hey, I have a lot of stuff going on in my own life. I am not your mom. I am not responsible for telling you when to be here and be there and reminding you to do this and do that. I am not your personal assistant. I have my own life to live. I can even show you calendar management. I could show you how to set up reminders on your phone and set up things to make you be more organized and on track. Outside of that, I can't help you, sis. Cause what? Who am I? You're a grown woman. Someone said I would have responded with, yeah, right. No one called or reminded me either. Who the heck do we complain to? And someone replied exactly my thought. I'd reply with, thanks for reminding me too. I like that approach. That's a nice petty approach. Ultimately, this isn't a person worth fighting for. If that offends her, OP dodged a bullet. And someone else said, this is totally the direction I would go, but know full well she will poison the whole friend group against me for making her feel ridiculous. Worth it, but sucks for people this age. And someone else said she will try to poison the friend group, but the other friends may also follow OP's example. Yeah, and if they don't, again, those are probably not friends that you want to have, but hopefully, like, if one person stands up, then the other people kind of will follow suit. CFWYDIRK said, so how do I tactfully deal with entitled behavior? You don't. College is a good age for her to learn to be more self-sufficient, which is not your job. She has a smartphone. She can set up reminders. Keep her at arm's length. She would never be a close friend for me. Exactly. I would never want to have somebody like that in my friend group, ever. Stunned Disbelief said, this reminds me of my ex. After I caught him cheating and left, he had nobody to remind him of things anymore. He missed both of our grandkids' birthdays. When I had to meet him to deal with some financial stuff, he complained to me that he hadn't known about them. I replied, of course not, because you relied on me to take care of all that stuff. Took it and me for granted and never appreciated any of it. But you know what? You hold in your hand right now a device which has a built-in app called Calendar. You can put important dates in it and even set reminders that go off on each date. Isn't that amazing? Maybe you should learn how to use it. It only took another 5 months for him to ask his oldest daughter, my step, for their birth dates and for a picture of your boy. Couldn't even remember his grandson's name, and he's almost 2. Tells you everything you need to know about how great a dad he's been in their entire lives as well. Yeah, some people are just lazy and they have weaponized incompetence and they just want people to do things for them. I am not the person to be associated with people like that at all. So we have one more post in this video. It is from the Malicious compliance subreddit. It's a little bit of a stress reliever post to get us more calibrated after reading these infuriating stories. So just a reminder to subscribe if you're not already, and we will go ahead and read this last post. No maps? I can do that. So my father and I have had a stilted relationship for a long time, but in recent years, he has been trying to extend an olive branch and I've been trying to accept. This is confounded by the fact that presented with any difficulty, he reverts to the bullheadedness that was a large part of breaking our relationship in the past. Normally, we take a small vacation once a year or two, just as father and son, to some mutual interest place. Typically, I do my level best to be driving for at least one leg of the trip, as otherwise I would have to sit through 2 legs driving barely at the speed limit. Now, a quick aside that's very relevant. My father has always been very proud of being technologically adverse and slow to adopt new technology, to the point where he exulted over having a smartphone with GPS in 2020. He preferred and prefers a more hands-on way of doing things, such as consulting a physical map to see which roadways are needed to be taken in order to get to a destination. That was fine growing up, but in the modern era, that thinking is just time wasting, in my opinion and experience. Yes, if you're in an area with no coverage, you're crap out of luck, but offline maps exist for a reason. I digress. On our most recent trip, my father was lamenting to me about how the youth of today can't function without our devices in our hands, and how he misses being able to take a trip out into the wild roads, that is. No one in our family has ever been a fan of camping, with merely his sense of direction and general sense of roads being his guide. He bemoaned how I barely even pay attention to street signs, relying almost entirely upon maps telling me when to turn, and that we're all living far too fancily or something. Now, normally I just tune out his extended rants on the decline of society and the sloth of the youth of today, but this trip I was feeling rather malicious, as he had previously brought up some of his annoying acts that had initially soured our relationship. So, as I made it downtown near where I work and where I know 100% of the streets, I leaned over and switched off the GPS and calmly drove over the river into the next county. Cue an absolutely mental breakdown from Father Dearest, who demanded to know why I had done that, and generally sad wailing on how we were now utterly lost and how would we make it back to society. I'm slightly exaggerating here since this was a couple years ago and I don't exactly remember what he said. I turned to him with the widest grin I could muster and asked in the sweetest butter wouldn't melt in my mouth voice, "I thought you didn't like using the GPS." Quite unfortunately, he didn't get the hint or was panicking too hard to, and just stridently demanded that I turn the GPS back on. Unfortunately, deprived of maps as I was, I had to guess where a U-turn would be, and after a couple false starts, I found a nice place to flip back 5 miles from the river. As stated before, downtown is my wheelhouse, so once we made it back, I just calmly dropped him off at his hotel. No harm done. I don't really have a satisfying ending, but hopefully I don't get any more rants on the uselessness of GPS. Okay. Well, thank you, OP, for sharing that malicious compliance. I kind of feel for the father a little bit because I am a little bit hard-headed and I think I know everything sometimes. So I can learn a lesson in that, but at least I'm self-aware. But thank you for sharing, and that is the last read for today's video. So thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.